Good morning. I guess about right now you're expecting a little skit with me and Angela, right? We both got fooled this week. I found out about Monday or Tuesday. Pastor was out of town this week, and in his infinite wisdom, he decided that it would be better for him to pass the buck to me this week rather than to have to study and try to get it all together. He actually said, "Are you going to have a skit?" And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this and a skit because this is, if you know me, this is not my thing. I always do this whenever I have to speak. My name is Kip Gulledge. I am the creative pastor here. If you are a first-time guest with us today, please understand I am not the senior pastor. Please do not judge your first visit on me today because this is not my forte. Although, usually this is where I usually come in and start doing a little wine routine about having to do this and whatnot. After last week's message, I had to tell myself I'm going to work the room that I'm given. Rather, if you were here last week, you'd understand that. We're in a series right now called The Doctor Is In. We're taking subject matter having to do with the doctors and medical field and that sort of thing, and working it into a message, so to speak. The first week we worked on mental and emotional health. The second week we did signs of a healthy church. Last week was the waiting room, and waiting on God. And here I am, fourth week. I try to give a little insight on having to get prepared and do what we have to do. It's hard enough, especially if you don't do this day in and day out, to have to prepare a message and get up in front of a bunch of people and try to convey a word that you believe God's given you. It's even harder, excuse me, it's harder when you've been given a subject matter that you have to keep it into. And I feel like it's a little bit unfair to me because Pastor has the First Lady who is a pharmacist. They've got a little bit, they can sit down and talk about it. The closest thing I've ever come to being a doctor is pulling a splinter out of somebody's foot with a pair of fingernail clippers or blowing a boo-boo when I put medicine on it. So it's been a struggle, and you sit down and you want to bring a message that God's given you, and you want it to pertain to what's going on. So I sat down, started praying, started asking the Lord to give me something, whatever. Where am I going to go with this thing? Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a TV channel called MeTV. Does anybody know about that? It's a TV channel. They play a bunch of old sitcoms and stuff that when I was young, a child, that my father and mother used to watch, and it's kind of nostalgic for me. Well, I enjoy that channel. It kind of takes me back a little bit. And if you're at my house, usually around 6 o'clock, what you're probably going to see is you're going to see me get a big glass of Kool-Aid, and yes, I do love Kool-Aid. And I'm going to sit down in the chair, and I'm going to cut the TV on, and this is what you're going to hear. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. I'm sure the young people, probably people younger than me, whatever. This was a television show back in the late 70s and early 80s called MASH. MASH stood for Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. And the show was about these doctors working in the Korean War and dealing with the soldiers on the front line. I love this TV show. I really do. I loved it when I was young, and I enjoy watching it now. The second thing you're going to hear at my house when you hear that is all of a sudden you're going to hear kids start whining, "Mama, do we have to watch this again?" They don't like it. They think it's just stupid, crazy. I don't know, but they whine when it's coming on. That got me to thinking, though, while I was sitting there listening to the whine and watching the TV show. You realize that some of the most popular, some of the most awarded, some of the most loved television shows have been about hospitals and have been about doctors. You remember ER years ago, George Clooney. Everybody, MASH again. Some of you ladies might remember General Hospital. My grandmother used to have soaps whenever I come home from school, and it always dealt with, there was always some hospital setting and doctors in their stressed out lives and whatnot. But many of you may know Grey's Anatomy. That's probably the most current thing. And I bet if I took a poll right now and said who was upset when they killed McDreamy, I'd get a bunch of hands, right? Because I know at my house, they wore black for like a week when the dude died on the TV show. But anyway, that got me to thinking, okay, we've done subject matter on health and things pertaining. Maybe we should do doctors. Let me just do something about a doctor. So how am I going to do this? Well, Luke was a doctor. Maybe I can go that route, but that didn't really pan out. The Bible refers to God as the great physician. So what am I going to do? I don't know. So doing my research, and I come across in the research something that I think we're all familiar with. I think something we've all heard if you've watched these doctor shows or even know anything about a doctor, period. It's something called the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocratic Oath. I mean, you've heard of it? Yeah. Well, let me give you a little history about the Hippocratic Oath. Long time ago. The profession of medicine has been around a long time, since before Jesus' time. But a long time ago, it was not so much a science as it was a belief system. In other words, if you're sick, if you're hurt, if you want to live a little bit longer, you went to a healing God and you presented him with a sacrifice and hoped that took care of the situation. Well, around the 5th century BC, a guy by the name of Hippocrates started to take notice that health was directly linked to what you did and what you put in your body. He started seeing that people who cleaned their food before they ate it, that they ate the right foods, that they didn't take unnecessary risks, that sort of thing. They started living longer and healthier. And he started putting that two and two together, that maybe it's not so much, I hope this works, as much as it is, there's a science to it. There's something we have to take, how we treat our bodies. Well, he started doing his studies. He started getting his information. He started teaching this, and which has become, basically that was the beginning of what we call modern medicine, modern science today. Well, somewhere along the way, and this is kind of sort of debated, somewhere along the way, either Hippocrates or one of his students came up with an idea that there needed to be some type of pledge, some type of check system that would do two things. Number one, it would bring honor to the profession and give it some credibility. Number two, it gave an accountability of the person who was going to be taking on that role of doctor or medicine giver or whatever. So they sat down and they came up with this list, basically the Hippocratic Oath, which is basically just a promise that these guys make that before they take on the profession of doctor, they're going to promise to do these things to uphold the honor of the profession. Well, in the process of looking at this, the Hippocratic Oath, and reading it, whatever, I realized there were some themes in there that sounded awful familiar, some things that kind of sort of had heard before. And what I'd like to do is kind of go through step by step a little bit on the Hippocratic Oath and kind of show you what I'm talking about. But what I want you to understand before I get started on that is these doctors make an oath. They make a promise. They make a pledge. If you're a Christian in here today, you've made an oath. If you claim to be a Christian, you've made an oath. You've made a pledge. And what I want you to see is the similarity to our oath as opposed to, or in conjunction with, the Hippocratic Oath. And if you would please put the first one up there. I swear by Apollo, this is how it begins. I swear by Apollo, the physician, and I'm not going to even try to say it, the surgeon, and call all the gods and goddesses to witness that I observe and keep this underwritten oath to the utmost of my power and judgment. It's basically saying I pray to these healing gods that I'm going to do the best I can do. Well, isn't that what we do? When we come to the Lord, we become Christians. Psalms 34:17 says, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. We cry out not to a bunch of healing gods, small g. We cry out to the all-knowing, all-powerful, omnipotent God with the big G, you know. Number 2, please. I will reverence my master who taught me the art. Equally with my parents, I will allow him things necessary for his support, and I will consider his sons and brothers. I will teach them my art without reward or agreement, and I will impart all of my acquirement instructions. And whatever I know to my master's children as to my own, and likewise to all my pupils, who shall bind and tie themselves as a professional oath, but to none else. Now, the key phrase I want you to see in there, what jumped out to me, is I will teach and pass on to my master's children. I mean, that's the direct reference to discipleship. In Matthew 28:19, it says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son of the Holy Spirit." Again, there's an oath there. It's an oath that you made as a Christian. When you signed up for God's family, you made this oath. Same as the doctor signed up when he signed up for the profession. He made this oath. Number 3, please. Whatever in the course of my practice I may see or hear, even when not invited, whatever I may happen to obtain knowledge of, if it not be proper to repeat it, I will keep sacred and secret within my own breast. You signed up as a Christian. We don't run around and gossip. I mean, basically, to me, that made a reference to run around and gossiping. Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." You see what I'm doing here? You made an oath to the Christ. If you're a Christian, you call yourself, you made an oath. It really kind of echoes. Number 4, please. Further, I will comport myself and use knowledge in a godly manner. I'll act in a godly manner. You signed up to be a Christian. You signed up to be a representative of God the Father. You should be a direct reflection of him. Act in a godly manner. That's pretty straightforward, I think. Number 5, please. If I faithfully observe this oath, may I thrive and prosper in my fortune and profession, and live in the estimation of posterity, or on breach thereof, may the reverse be my fate. Basically, he's saying, if I'm faithful to this oath I make, then I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be positive. If I'm not, the breach thereof, may the reverse be of my faith. 2 Chronicles 20:20 says, "Early in the morning they left for the desert of Tekoa. And as they set out, Jehoshaphat stood and said, 'Listen to me, Judah, and the people of Jerusalem. Have faith in the Lord your God, and you will be upheld. Have faith in his prophets, and you will be successful.'" Number 6, please. This one's I grouped these together, and I'm not going to take you're tired of hearing me read anyway, I'm sure. But basically what these say, and let me see if I can find it. The first one is he's going to take care of the sick. He's going to take care and do the best of his count that he can. Second one is, I will give no sort of medicine to a pregnant woman to destroy a child. I will not administer poison to anyone, even if they ask you to. And the last one is, whatever house I may enter, he's going to be there for doing good. Basically, they have this motto is, if you can't do good, don't do anything. Don't make it worse. Do no harm is basically how they put it. Mark 12:31 says, "The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Do no harm. Do no harm." Now, and you can see there's really some similarities. I know there's a little bit of paraphrasing going on there, but there's a lot of very similarities there. But let me tell you what the danger is. There's a danger. There's a danger in the hypocritical oath and what we're comparing to. Christian, there's a danger in it becoming the hypocritical oath if you're not careful. And I'm going to show you how that can be. Let's go back to the first slide. This is the one in which they swear by the gods. Well, again, If you're a Christian, we swear by the true God. We don't swear by a bunch of heathen gods. But my question to you is, who is your God? Do you know your God? I get the opportunity a lot of times to talk with people. In this profession, you just have people that want to talk to you sometimes, whether you want to or not. But that's what we're here for. But you get an insight with people, how they view God and what they think of him and all that. Some people see God as a magic 8-ball. I mean, it's you know those games, you shake it, whatever. They see God as this thing that's up in the clouds, and they want an answer, a yes, no, or a maybe. Or check back later sometimes, you know, if you shake that thing. Some people see him as an 8-ball. Some people see God as an axe or some type of instrument behind a glass case. I don't know if you've ever seen these in the buildings before, but it's always got a little sticker on it that says, open only in case of emergency. That's some people's gods. When they get in a bind, you know, they're going to call on him then. Otherwise, you know, if you will, just go sit in your glass case. More often than not, though, this is the God that I see people talk about. My father, he had a bunch of heroes, if you will, coming up. One of them was a man by the name of Buford Pusser. I don't know if you guys know or not. There was a movie made years and years ago called Walking Tall. Now, Buford Pusser, it's a true story from what I understand. He basically went into a town that was full of corrupt police officers, corrupt government, whatever, and decided he was going to clean it up. And what he did is he took a big old stick, bigger than a baseball bat, and he started cleaning house. If you didn't agree with what he was doing, if you tried to come against him, he took that stick and he destroyed everything in his path, and he beat the snot out of you. If your God is sitting up on a cloud right now with a big stick, and he's sitting there waiting for you to make a mistake so that he can take his big stick and he can crack you upside the head, then you don't know the God that I know. The God that I know, he wants to be there in case there's an emergency. He wants to be there in case I've got a question so he can give me a yes, no, or maybe. Quite frankly, he wants to discipline me if I need discipline. But he also wants to love me. And he wants to spend time with me and talk to me on a daily basis. And he wants to hear what makes me happy, and he wants to hear what makes me sad. That's the God that we serve. So just keep that in mind. If your God is one of the three that we talked about before, you may be on a hypocritical oath. Just you know, think about it. Second slide, please. This is the one in which we talked about discipleship. Let me ask you a question. When's the last time you told somebody about Jesus? On the job, in the store. When's the last time at lunch you bowed your head and you said, grace? Because I'm going to tell you something. People are watching. And now you can say what you want to. Discipleship is showing Jesus to other people. And when I've been there. There's a reason I say this. I've sat down and started eating and looked over and saw someone bow their head. And I think, wow, I missed the boat on that one. I really did. They spoke to me. It spoke to other people in the room. When's the last time there was a church function, be it a youth thing or whatever, and you couldn't wait to get here instead of trying to figure out why you couldn't get here? I mean, that's discipleship, these children, whatever. We have some ladies that on Sunday morning, whether you know this or not, and this is my advertisement, on Sunday morning, before we even start service, they go upstairs with these kids, and they sit down and they tell them. They tell them about Jesus. They tell them what they think they need to know. That's discipleship. When's the last time you wanted to get involved in something like that? When's the last time you wanted to make sure your child was up there when it happened? Next, please. Basically, the gossip on whatever I hear. Well, listen, do you have Facebook? Because if you cut on Facebook, one day you're going to see somebody praising the Lord and quoting Scripture. The next day, they're going to be airing dirty laundry like, oh, get out. If that's what you're doing, you may be on the hypocritical oath. And I'm going to just leave it at that. Okay. Next, please. I will act in a godly manner. again, like I said a while ago, it's pretty self-explanatory. Here's what I see sometimes, though. I see some people think if they need to act in a godly manner, they think they need to act that they're a god, and everybody else needs to um, acknowledge, represent that they're a god. Do what I want you to do. Say what I want you to say. That sort of thing. There's a lot of Christians that I mean, I am the God. Not that I'm acting like the Father. I'm not giving that reflection. I'm actually going to be God myself, and you're going to do what I tell you to do because I've been in Sunday school longer than you have, or I've been. But anyway, you kind of get the point. Next one, please. Faithful in oath. Well, and again, faithful in oath means I've made an oath. I'm a child of God. I'm a representative of the family. But when we get to the hypocritical side of things, where it could be, I've seen a lot of people that they want the results, they want the payoff, they don't want to have to go through the motions and do what they have to do. They don't want to show up, and they don't want to follow through with the oath they've made. They just want the payoff. Again, hypocritical oath. Finally, number 6. And with all of these, again, we go back to the motto, do no harm. Do no harm. Do no harm. I can't say that enough. Quick story. I took my 10-year-old to the movies a couple of weeks ago. We're standing in line. As a father, standing in front of us, and he's got 4 teenage kids around him, and they're being teenage kids, all girls, and they're just being teenage girls having a good time. One of them obviously was his daughter, and I think she said something about, "Are we going to get popcorn?" It's something just that simple. And he turned on a dime and he looked at her and he said, "Shut up. Why are you so stupid?" He said that to her. And all these people in this line, and it broke my heart because she willed it right there in front of everybody. Do no harm. I mean, there's no reason for that. The ex is acting the fool. I mean, we get aggravated, or somebody's acting the fool, whatever. But in this situation, the ex is acting the fool. And you just got to have somebody to fuss. You're not going to believe it. It should not be the children. You should not look at the children and that's their mother, that's their father, regardless of whether they're doing right or wrong. Do no harm. We've had recently, I'm just going to touch on this and I'm going to leave it alone, but recently, again, if you look on the internet, the news, whatever, I get it. Everybody's got an opinion. You're going to Facebook. We've got flag issues. We've got all kinds of Supreme Court, everything else. I get it. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody thinks they're right. Everybody wants to be heard. My question is the price you're going to pay for being right and being heard, is that worth the damage it's going to do to your reputation? Is that the damage it's going to do to the person who's thinking about coming to church, but when they realize you're there and the things that you've said, I don't want anything to do with that. Do no harm. Do no harm. Just sometimes you just got to be quiet and ask the Lord to take care of it. He'll take care of it if you ask him to. Might not be in the way you want it to. He will take care of it. By the way, when you're looking on the Facebook things and whatnot, check the news sources, please, because I have seen so many things where it's like the National Enquirer of Facebook, and they put these outlandish stories, and you see these people who claim to be Christian all of a sudden come out the woodwork, and not only are they doing harm, but they're doing harm over something that's not even true. So if you're even going to do it, which I ask you not to, but if you're going to, please make sure it's a credible source. I mean, that's... now, here's one more thing I want to let you know about the hypocritical oath. I get confused. What we've covered right here is basically is an interpretation from the original Greek. The Hippocratical oath has been rewritten numerous times since then. The reason being, And there was one of them that said, "I'll give no poison to a man, or even if you ask." Well, they had a situation years and years ago where there was a medical worker at the hospital, at the prison. They had a guy that were getting ready to do lethal injection on. They couldn't find a vein, so they had this, and there was a lawsuit over it. But they had to take that part out because now all of a sudden, this guy who was a doctor was given lethal injection medicine, which was in direct conflict with the oath. Obviously, there was something about not giving a woman any type of poison to kill a child. Unfortunately, we have legalized abortion in the United States now. They had to accommodate that. And so what they've done is they've basically tailored this thing and nitpicked and changed whatever to fit our time and our agenda. A person that's on a hypocritical oath, they're doing the same thing. They're taking the oath that they made, and they truly may have said, "I'm yours, Lord," come down to this altar, gave their life, and they made that oath. But then all of a sudden, well, I made an oath to give, but you know what? I'm going to change that oath to, I'm going to give when the money's in the bank. Or they may have made an oath that said, I'm going to love everybody. And later on, it's like, do I have to love everybody? Maybe I can just love the people that I agree with or I like, or see things the same way that I see. And so they start rewriting this oath. What's the punishment, you may ask, for not following the oath? Well, back in Hippocrates' time, the original oath, several things could have happened. Number one, you had dishonor among your peers, people that looked to you, whatever. Number two, you could get fined or some type of punishment from it. Number three, they took away your ability to practice medicine, period. You weren't allowed to do it anymore. You couldn't agree to work by the oath. In today's time, there's no legal binding to the oath. If a doctor doesn't live up to the oath, he's not going to get in trouble. Now, we do have malpractice suits and that sort of thing, but the reality is there's no legal binding to the Hippocratical oath, yes. But what is the circumstances to breaking your oath to God? Ecclesiastes 5, 4, and 5 says, when you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. It is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. So, Christians, if you've come down here, you've given your life to Christ, and you profess to be a Christian, and you're not keeping your vow, you are better off never to have come down here to begin with. You're better off to be just as lost could be than to have made a vow to God and then started rewriting your own and changing this one and not doing that one and working it to your own circumstance. It's been kind of a little bit of a heavy type message, if you will. But I want you to understand, if you keep your vow, it can be incredible. Things can happen that you couldn't even dream of. I want to give you a circumstance. About 2 years ago, I spent a lot of time in hospital around doctors. A lot of time. You see, around February of that year, my mother got diagnosed with a perforated colon. We got to the hospital and they were doing surgery. We sat in the room and we laughed and cut up, couldn't wait for Mama to get out, and we thought we were going to throw her in the car and take her home. The doctor came in the room and he said, we think she's going to be all right. We've got her straightened out. She's in really bad shape, but we think she's going to make it. We think she's going to make it. We had no idea. And we started on a journey, about a 6-week journey of her in the hospital. ICU. They had her on medications that she had said, when she was even able to say anything, she said some crazy things. But it was a process, and she got better and we worked through it. Now, in this hospital, Baptist Hospital in Columbia, South Carolina, incredible hospital, incredible people. Down to the lunchroom worker would come in the room and bring a tray of food and sit it down, and he'd say, "Miss Gulledge, can I pray with you?" And of course, when she was able to, she said, "Oh, yes, please." And he'd take his hat off and he'd put it in there. And he would say some of the most heartfelt prayers that you ever heard in your life. The lunchroom worker didn't know my mama, didn't know me anything. This fellow had made an oath. He had made an oath to the Lord. And he was keeping it. And it made a big impression, as you can tell. Fast forward, we get Mama out of the hospital, we get her situated. A couple months go by. And we end up in the hospital again, this time with Daddy. Daddy was diagnosed with liver cancer. And this oncologist came in, same hospital, same people. This oncologist came in. He talked with us and he said, "We're going to get this thing. We're going to grab a hold of it. We're going to take care of it." And they did everything they possibly could do. They really did. It was just Daddy's time to go. But the thing I want you to take from this, the thing I want to say about it, this oncologist, when it became apparent that we weren't moving in the right direction, my mama came to him and she said, "What are we going to do? What do I need to do?" And he took my mother by the hand. This doctor, his older gentleman, he had done this forever, and he was like very prominent, well known in his field. He took my mother by the hand, and tears started running down his face. And he said, "The doctor in me has been trained to fight to the bitter end." He said, "I want to look at you and say, tomorrow we'll try something different, and we'll do this, and we'll do that until the very last breath." Then he stopped again and he said, "But I'm also a family member, not just a doctor." He said, "I have family." And he said, "If this were my family," he said, "I would take him home and love on him, make him comfortable." And he cried. He didn't know us. He didn't know anything about us. He'd spent time with us in his hospital in probably the worst circumstances you could be in. And he cried with us, and he took care of us. And he said what my mother needed to hear. I don't know what oath this guy took. I don't know if he took the original. I don't know if he took one of the variations, whatever. I'll tell you, this man, he upheld his Hippocratical oath. I believe that in all my heart. Here it is 2 years later, and we can be sitting around and we can talk about the circumstances with Daddy and what we went through and everything, and this man always comes up. We discuss how loving he was and how caring he was and how good he was. And I know I've made a long story getting there, but what I'm trying to tell you is, if you keep your oath to God, and you keep it as good as you can, you might not know it, because this doctor, he's taking care of other people now. We don't have contact with him, whatever. He's eating his Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. He's with his family. But in my house, in my family's house, my mother's house, we're talking about him. We're talking about the impact that he had on my life, on our lives. You keep your oath, I promise you, you may not know it, you may not get to hear it, but somebody somewhere is going to be sitting in their house talking about you and what you did for them. We're going to open the altar up in just a second. Only thing I ask is you bow your head just a second and just do a reflection, Christian. Is it a hypocritical oath or a Hippocratical oath that you're working on right now? Is there some parts of your oath that you need to work on? Just reflect on that, if you will. Now, There's another group of people in here, though. People who can't say they've ever made an oath. You've never asked the Lord to come inside. You never made those promises. Dr. Jesus is in the house. And the thing about Dr. Jesus is you don't have to make an appointment. He'll come to you. Dr. Jesus makes house calls. So maybe today you need to make that oath. Maybe it's something that you need to do. If everybody would just bow your head and close your eyes right now. Just think about it. Just reflect.